And before I bring on my guest, let us take a listen to Nigeria's Minister of Finance, that is Zainab Ahmed, talking about the latest developments as regards the subsidy removal and the $800 million that has been given by the World Bank.
Today, the Federal Executive Council gave approval for the construction of 32 numbers, block of 8 flats, that consists of 2-bedroom flats, and also 15 numbers, 6 flats consisting of 3-bedroom flats for the Nigerian Customs Service at the Aviation Village Phase 2 in Abuja. So this is the Nigerian Customs Service barracks. The contract is in the sum of 5.549 billion naira with a delivery period of 81 weeks.
All right, that is the Finance Minister for Nigeria, Zainab Ahmed, talking about the areas where the fund will be channeled into. Now, I have Gosel Obele, Chief Economist and Streetnomics Limited, who is going to be talking to us as regards the subsidy. Thank you so much, Gosel, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lekan. Good morning.
So by June, subsidy removal will happen in Nigeria, and that talk has gone on for so many years, if not decades. So do you think that or believe it will happen this time?
Well, there's a likelihood it will happen this time, and that's because all of the political, prior to the elections, all the presidential candidates had been stated as a frontline manifesto argument that they would take out fuel subsidy. Also important to note that prior to the elections, even up until now, we're still faced with a lot of fuel scarcity challenge. And we've seen Nigerians having to access PMS or buy PMS at very ridiculously high amounts, as though the subsidy were removed already, if at all they exist. So technically, it's likely going to happen. But then again, I'm not too sure that it's going to be a fully new reality for Nigerians. I see it as a time and season that would push Nigerians into further cost of living crisis, as it were. However, the social intervention program from the World Bank is largely as expected, because right now globally, social interventions are sort of like one of the leading thematic arguments, around how do you help people, citizens, get through the cost of living crisis. Although the cost of living crisis we're faced with was induced by more geopolitical tensions, but we've seen that in the Nigerian context, outside just geopolitical tensions, it's also self-inflicted, or like you would want to say due to probably fiscal indiscipline, poor public sector related engagement in the oil and gas sector, even the NNPC's involvement and all of that. So most of our cost of living challenges in Nigeria are largely self-inflicted than just geopolitical or regional tensions, as the case may be. So the big catch is, yes, we're in the era of interventions, which is part of why the World Bank is also doing what it needs to do. The argument or question for me is, how would this intervention be different in terms of delivering a soft landing for the average Nigerian, especially when you compare that to Shopee, because it can be likened to a very large extent like the Shopee investment, which was take out subsidy and put those monies in a social intervention program called Shopee, to create more jobs and the like. So those are the big questions on my mind as we proceed or, navigate these new realities.
So it seems as though you are okay with the social intervention program, and of course with the $800 million that is coming to Nigeria, but then you are particular about its implementation and how it is different from all of the social intervention programs. But then this particular national social intervention program has been in existence since 2016. So I'd like to find out from you what it has achieved over the course of the years and what impact it has had on the citizens.
You mean the Shopee?
No, I'm talking about the National Social Program, Investment Program.
Yeah. So,
yes.
Yeah, the National Social Investment Program was launched by the current administration, and headlined at first by the Vice President. And was seen quite comprehensively. It was a lot of drive, a lot of investments, a lot of concerns around how can we drive more inclusion. But as much as the program fared for quite some good time and maybe delivered some little bits of sprinklets of positive improvements, we also realize that you cannot necessarily, within the context of economic development, right, drive social intervention programs without structural reforms. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. I'm trying to understand why in Nigeria we're trying to patch our wounds, not necessarily treat those wounds. So, and that's what we find, in the case where we find ourselves in. Your markets need to develop, for you to be able to create the right opportunities, particularly job and employment opportunities, that will match the skill sets of young people. Your educational institutions have to evolve, to train those young people to be ready for those opportunities. Now, if you do not have those two, at best, what you will get from the social intervention program will be so much patch-driven information, so much underemployment reinvented, so much unemployment further reinvented, and a very patchy scheme that doesn't sit well with the context of, really the context of our realities as a nation and what we need to get together to move to the next level. So I would, in my own opinion, I'll probably rate it a 3/10 in terms of results of this performance. The motive was right, but I think the structure of its execution was, number one, misaligned. Number two, lacked the right institutional or structural enablers, to help that intervention thrive at the moment. So I'm expectant that the next administration, for once, being positive, will probably look at social intervention from an angle of structural reforms bit, as well as all the sprinklets of policy solutions that needs to be introduced and properly targeted, towards specific sectors that can deliver the productivity we want to see. If you look at most structured economies, what we're seeing is that social intervention is only used as a tool or instrument to enable relief or an improvement from point A to point B, built on the grounds of existing functional and institutional structures. So when you don't have that structural or functional institutional, when you don't have that structural and institutional processes to enable your social interventions, what will happen is that you are going to literally bounce back to poverty or bounce back to increased unemployment and all that, regardless of the interventions you've introduced in the first place.
But then, Gosel, is it out of place to say that instead of these monies or this money to be channeled towards social intervention initiatives, it should be used to resuscitate the refinery, because Nigeria does not have a working refinery, as it were. And I remember in our previous conversations, you have harped and talked about that, owing to the fact that this has led to the inability of Nigeria to locally refine its products, and it's costing us more when we have to purchase this this commodity from outside of the country. So what do we do?
To realize this thing, it's again, like I talk a lot about institutional ideology, and I think it's one major thing that is largely holding us back as a people. You need to fix the refineries and maybe even fix power to have a more sustainable approach towards managing the demand on PMS. Anything outside that is just short-termist and very, very misaligned in terms of execution and outlook for the future. All right, like I mentioned earlier on, the reason why you have subsidy is because you have a huge demand on PMS, and because you're not providing those, you're not producing PMS locally, you have to import to meet that huge demand locally. And that would mean rising cost of importation, and you also don't talk about imported inflation across the value chain. When you juxtapose that with how much you have available to spend, or how much the citizens have available to spend on PMS, you want to now introduce subsidy. So subsidy is really not the conversation. As a result, the social intervention should not really be the focus. So the focus should largely be on fixing the refineries. And I would also say that not fixing the refineries can also be an intentional game of play by extractive institutions. The goal is to cripple the productive drivers of the economy so that there will be chaos. And in the midst of chaos, you roll out policies that are very dysfunctional, and then you milk the people some more. And that's how extractive institutions work. All right. So in my own opinion, I think that it's a political will than not having the money to fix the refineries. We have what it takes to fix the refinery. I mean, all of a sudden, everybody's now interested in the Dangote refinery. You need more than just Dangote to fix Nigeria's energy problems. All right, you need a much more relatively healthy competitive market. It cannot really be healthy, healthy is a function of having built proper compromise, or win-win around compromise. But what we're trying to say is you need more refineries outside just Dangote to meet local demand, one. Two, you need to fix power to relax local demand on PMS. Three, you also need to ensure that you build the right structural and institutional reforms to take on interventions. So what we've seen is just a roller coaster of how extractive institutions lead, and it doesn't in any way improve the quality of life of the average Nigerian. No matter what they've said in terms of where these monies will be spent and how much will be spent on what, it will still not yield the same result because we've not dealt with the most functional things that would push us closer to inclusion and prosperity, which should be the end game.
So Gospel, are you saying this could be a lose-lose situation for Nigeria? Because we need to establish the fact that this money being provided by World Bank is not a grant, it's not a free money, it's a borrowed money that is coming to Nigeria for a country that already has a debt stats that's about 77 trillion naira. And you're still going on to borrow, and you are implying that these funds will be channeled to areas that might not really meet the demands that are needed for the Nigerian economy.
Productivity demands for the people. Yeah. So I mean, World Bank, the IMF, and all those guys have the interest. Yeah, and it's one thing that we've not really recognized enough to be able to define what our own interest is, and then go to the negotiation table to have that conversation and align around interests. You know, the world is not necessarily interested in helping your economy or in Nigeria, whatever the case may be, become prosperous because they don't want you to become prosperous. They're in the game because they have something in mind to achieve as well. So Nigeria also needs to define what is the need for them to have a win-win conversation around how these interventions work. Otherwise, the interventions and the loanable funds will be built around terms and conditions that may not really be sustainable for us in terms of public finance, and that will come back again to affect our revenue mobilization and all of that, and we are back again to this conversation 2 years later. All right, so we've been having this subsidy conversation for almost a decade now. Why have we not been able to find a way around it? We've been having social intervention conversation for almost a decade now. Why have we not been able to progress sustainably around it? So it's just to tell you that we need to do more around how we position ourselves, how we define ourselves, how we prioritize what's important for us as a people and as a nation, and then we take that to the negotiation table. Quite honestly, the current Nigerian revenue mobilization strategy would not yield much of revenue. So Nigeria needs more funding, to reach its development aspirations. But because the guys funding know these things, they're weaving the funding around the lines of interest that matters more to them and what they want out of it at the end of the day. So we need to engage more tactically, bearing in mind that the life of the average Nigerians is at stake, the future of the unborn generation and the young people are at stake, and also prosperity and inclusion is at stake. So I do not see that what you're bringing to the table part of things, from a Nigerian context. The argument has been announcing big deals by the World Bank, by the European Union in the Nigerian economy, but we need to do more around what is the need for us and what are we bringing to the table differently that these guys need as well, to facilitate that growth and developmental process for inclusion.
All right, so now that we are seeing that some people within the mix are not really supporting the program, as it were, does it mean that even as the World Bank has decided to make this fund available, it is in some way in support of Nigeria's economic reform efforts?
Of course, I mean, the narrative is to be politically correct, and be correct on the lines of reforms. These guys are very smart people. They know what our challenges are. They know what our interest is. They know what will get us to say yes on the deals table. So the structure of the interventions, the objective of the interventions, the narrative, the comms, everything about the intervention is tailored heavily, to sit in line with your reform needs as a nation. So and all taking into cognizance the fact that there is a new administration coming to power. It just creates that opening and window for them to have these conversations. All right. Again, I'll resort to the fact that what the current administration, the next action, what are the priorities and how do they plan to manage the interest of international communities in our nation? You can't take out their involvement, but you have to manage their interests. And in managing their interest, you also need to have either a counter interest or an interest that aligns on the priorities of what you want, to take it forward from there. So I don't really see that happening. I don't see any institutional representative or stakeholder being vocal about it. I don't see any presentations being made at the world stage identifying and mapping what our interest is as a people. I don't even see us we don't even have a national industry policy to start with, to tell the world this is where we are looking at as top 5 sectors to take Nigeria to the next level. We don't have all that. So until we begin to have those conversations, begin to lobby our way into those conversations, we might not be on the right side of this divide. And trust me, interventions are sort of like the new economic instrument for control, for access, and for all of that. Yeah.
All right. So finally, guys, before I let you go, Nigeria is hoping to save about 3.36 trillion naira once the subsidy is removed. Now, I'd like to know, just to be on a very positive side, what are the areas you feel that when this fund is saved and by the time the subsidy is removed, Nigeria should be plugging this finance into? Because we are looking at how Nigerians will be better off when the subsidy is removed and when we have some sort of equilibrium in terms of the benefits that should come to the citizens.
To be honest with you, I don't think this intervention would yield much on the core fundamentals of what it means for Nigeria to get better. And I'm not trying to sound like a pessimist. It could do well in terms of channeling investments, but your investments need to thrive on the grounds of strong structures, solid institutions, and visionary leadership. And if you look at it very well, we'll be very honest in the conversation, all of these three elements are not in place. We're not talking about the political party's manifesto and interest of an individual. No, we're looking at a comprehensive drive for an inclusive economy driven by a visionary political economy. We do not have that. And because we do not have that, the interventions are going to be a one-off. Yet it may relax the pressure around the cost of fuel. But then again, it doesn't take out the fact that power is not an issue. It does also take out the fact that Nigerians still depend heavily on PMS. How can the average household in Nigeria, buy up to 20 liters of fuel every week to have a life? That's completely ridiculous, right? So we need to get to a place where the average Nigerian home, the average Nigerian business does not need to visit a fuel station weekly, to run business successfully or to have a functioning home in the ideal state of things. So that shouldn't be the mainstay of the economy, all right? But then again, because of how extractive institutions work, the dynamics of play have been built in such a way that whether interventions or not, these things will still remain as the mainstay. So for me, the argument is leading more structural reforms around providing power, providing a more stable economic environment, fixing the local refineries, enabling more. You have a lot of illegal refineries that are running, rather than shutting them down, because you can't see, it's not a black and white scenario again. So you can't necessarily shut down the illegal refineries. The argument is why are people doing these things illegally? And how can we sort of shift from illegal refineries to maybe semi-legal, and have a way around, multiplying, that refinery base and all of that. So it's about thinking of the economics from a level of win-win compromise or a win-win situation than a what you have or what you don't have, what must happen or what cannot happen. So it's no longer a black and white situation, in context of the world we live in. And that's the approach I will look at things from. And within that lens, how can you still deliver economic productivity and inclusion for your people, which is very critical in the times we live in, considering the complexities of the VUCA world.
Very much. The delivery is very important, and also accountability is also very important, because we need to be able to verify the certain number of people that will be receiving these funds. Well, thank you so much, Gospel. Let's just make the conversation there. We just make the conversation there because we can't go further than that. Maybe we'll stretch it some other time and have you come around to talk on that. Thank you so much.
And have a good day, Lekan.
And you too.